Welcome to Wagons of Steel. It's a party and everyone's invited. Today it's going to be a fun video. I'm going to tell you about the dumbest things I've done drag racing. There's a few of them. I've probably forgotten a few just because it's good to forget that kind of stuff. The first one is the simplest one, perhaps, and many people have done this outside of drag racing. It was I forgot to put the hood pins in my hood. It was a pretty lucky story, actually. I was with the Wagons of Steel crew, and it was the Belvedere, and it was a full race car, so it was trailered. I'm not sure it was trailered there. I used to roll there and then switch over to race tires and pull the exhaust off when I got to the track. I think it was then. So I was probably running 11-second quarter miles. And I had a whole crew of high schoolers from town there with us. And so we were, trying to be role models, I guess. I don't know. And we did pre-flight and then closed the hood, and something distracted us and didn't put hood pins in, and pulled up to the starting line and took off, and all of a sudden, wham, the hood's up against the windshield, and I hit the brakes and the hood went back down again, and I idled up to the finish line and turned around and came back. And I was ready to have a whole bunch of, have the whole crew pitch me a bunch of what, and it was kind of embarrassing to do it in front of a bunch of students and stuff, and nobody had even seen it. And it turned out, I probably could have gotten away with it, except that the hood was all beat up and bent. So the guy in the other lane had been even more boneheaded than me. When he launched, he had his hood pins in, but his U-joint knocked out right away at the back, at the rear end, and he kept his foot in the gas, kept trying to go somewhere. It wouldn't go anywhere because the U-joint from the drive shaft was disconnected from the rear end, and so the drive shaft was violently flapping around underneath the car, making horrible noises, and the crew on the starting line was all like, no, stop, and the guy kept hitting it, and so he put on a big show, so nobody noticed that my Belvedere was idling down the track with the hood plastered against the windshield, and so I dodged a couple of bullets. The whole crew and everybody knew about it. It's a legendary Wagons of Steel story, but it didn't get announced over the loudspeaker or anything like that because everyone was paying attention to this poor guy. And then the ironic thing about it was that at the when I finally got to race again, the hood was too beat up to keep on the car, so they let you run with no hood if you put an air filter on the car. We had a good air filter, so we went up and ran. It was a record breaker. We went I think the car had been running at the bottom of the 12s, and I went on 11.99, or it could have been at the bottom of the 11s, and we went 10.99. It was a long time ago. Here's a Wagons of Steel artifact. This is actually the hood off of the Belvedere that was on the day I plastered it against the windshield. You can see it's kind of beat up now, obviously, and wrinkled and crinkled. Actually, it was there's the hood pinholes. It was kind of a normal hood before I crashed. I plastered it and broke it, and so then after that I lightened it all up. Here's some secret Wagons of Steel tips how to lighten a hood. Took all the structure out from underneath it because it was all bent up anyways, and then flattened it out by putting a 2x4 under it and pounding against the 2x4 kind of like a dolly, and then had to put 2 hood pins in the back, so it was a pin on hood, no longer a hinge hood. If you had a hood scoop on it, the hood scoop is long gone. The flame job's coming off. The Belvedere is a cool looking car. It'll be back. Another really dumb thing I did was, this is in no particular order. I don't know if this is the dumbest thing I did. It was 2005, and I was at my first NHRA national event in stock Eliminator. We spent 2 years building the car and gone to all the divisional events to get the points we needed and qualified for the national event, and on the first day, on Saturday, I won 2 rounds. It was fantastic. I beat Bill Bushmaker, and then I drew Alf Weeb. And Alf Weeb is, if you don't know, he's a real famous suspension guy, and he's like a Buick superhero guy. He runs a 4-speed Buick, like 1970 455 Buick GS in C-Stock. And he actually, I don't know if it's just like Jason Line, the famous Jason Line Pro Stock guy. He actually is an old school stock eliminator guy. Like, he won stock eliminator national championship in the 90s, early 90s. He drove around the country with a Buick on a flat trailer towed behind his pickup truck. And he's a nice guy. And he was especially nice to me that day because he took Alf Weeb's car for a drive around the pits and blew it up. So Alf Weeb had to sacrifice the event, and I got a buy round because I drew him as a competitor. But back to the story. The next day, I was in the 3rd round racing on Sunday, which I was too new to even know when I went and got my, they have the drag racing. It's the people who give out the schedule. So you go and get the schedule. It's kind of a ritual. And the people at the schedule said, "Oh, you're there on Sunday. Congratulations. Good for you." I thought, "Oh, wow, cool, great." And so I drew Denny. It says Denny. Denny is, I can't remember. He's a character around here, and he's had this red Camaro, which has beaten me 3 times with 3 different drivers. But the first time, Denny was driving it. Greg Denny, that's his name, Greg. He was driving it, and he was trying to spook me out and stuff, and like to play tricks on my mind. And I guess he was sort of effective. I'm pretty good at resisting that shit. But anyways, we come up to the starting line, and it was he was running an H stocker, I think H stock, and I was running B stock. So my car was faster than his, and so he got to leave first, and then I got totally distracted by. I don't know if you've ever been to a national event. If you have, you'll see there's this thing. It's like a crane, but instead of having a crane end on it, it's got a gondola. Or no, it doesn't even have a gondola. It's just got a huge camera on the end of it. It's remote control operated. And this thing comes down, and I'm looking over, like, wow, what's that? And then I look up and my light is green. Which, if you've ever been a drag racer, if you see a green light, you're too late. So I cut like a 0.3 something light, which is, I believe, the crappiest light that I have ever cut in an unwounded car in my entire drag racing career, up till then and since then. And I ended up losing that first round, and oh my God, my crew chief was so disappointed in me. And then the only way that he snapped out of it was, I got a check. I got a check for as much as it cost us to race. So if you make it to the 3rd round, you get a check. So there, I learned about that. But it was a pretty dumbass thing to do. Okay, back in the day, in the 90s, I was a super hot and heavy bracket racer. And I was running in this car back here, the Mighty Josephine 1. And even at its lightest, that car weighed 2 tons. It weighed 4,000 pounds, probably more. And, if you got a car that weighs 4,000 pounds and it's got, enough horsepower to run in the 12s, you break a lot of stuff. And mostly what you break are the rear ends, the axle assemblies. And so I tore through those. And one day, towards the end of the season, I blew up the rear end. And so I, with an 8 3/4 rear end, it's not that big of a deal to swap it out. You pull the axles out and then drop the drive shaft, and then there's like, I think it's 10 bolts or 10 nuts you pull off, and then you can just drop the rear end out. I think it's even called a drop out assembly. And then you clean all the teeth and metal and crap that's left over and clean it out and put the rear end back in and fill it up, and you're good to go. Well, nothing's ever that easy. So I had a rear end assembly that would work, and I think I even had it with me, and I put it in, and then it was the U-joint. It's a special U-joint. I mean, it's not always the same. You just got to have a U-joint that'll fit the drive shaft and the yoke on the rear end. And a lot of times it's not just a straight up square. You know, they're not exactly the same. So like the one that I happened to need for that occasion was I guess you'd call it a cross, or there's different words for it. But the one dimension was longer than the other dimension, and I didn't have that U-joint with me, and so we ended up having to, call one of our buddies' girlfriends who was back at the house where our shop was, and, talk her through where the drawer full of U-joints was, and eventually just told her to bring them all. So she brought all the U-joints, and then we tried to, well, actually we did. We got it all hooked up, got it all buttoned up and ready to go, and I fired it up and put it in gear, and it still wouldn't go anywhere. I was like, what is wrong with this? And then I looked down, and there's this huge puddle of transmission fluid, and there was this hole in there, which of course we immediately saw, a hole the size of a fist. So when I'd blown up the rear end, I'd also taken out the transmission, and the transmission is a much bigger deal to replace than a rear end assembly, and that was the end of the season in that car. So that was spending all that time swapping the rear end without checking the transmission. That was a pretty dumb thing to do. Another dumb thing the Wagons of Steel team in general, and me specifically, used to do all the time was race with a savage hangover. I mean, I've done a video about it before. I used to drink a lot, and it's hard to I don't even know how to say it. When you're drag racing and you're a hard drinker, there's a lot of other hard drinkers out drag racing, and it's totally against the rules and against common sense to race when you're drunk. That goes without saying. But when the racing is over, everybody gets together and drinks a ton of beer and anything else that is got alcohol in it. I mean, it's not like we're drinking vanilla or something, but it's pretty heavy duty. And man, I can't tell you how many times it just takes the joy out of it to race with a terrible hangover. It's so loud and hot, and oh god. And the irony of it is, it's actually kind of funny now, is if you have a really bad hangover and you're just dying to lose, you're just like, God, just let me out of this damn car. You keep winning and winning and winning. You can't buy a loss. And, when you're totally sharp as a tack and you want to win, then of course it's like, it's the opposite seems to be true, Murphy's Law. I'm sure it's just coincidence, but I can't tell you how many times I've been racing and I've got a really strong cast iron stomach and stuff, but like the crew chief is all puking in the bushes, and people are just walking in circles and no one knows what's going on. We're all just in savage hangover mode, and that's just a dumbass thing to do. Okay, here's a 2-for-1 dumb. It was a long time ago. I was racing at Bremerton Raceway, and I was running in the Helvetier when he looked like this. You remember that? You know me a long time. Back when he was basically my daily driver. And I was running Sportsman. I was in hot and heavy competition for the points title that year. And I was, if you ever go out to the drag strip and you talk to drag racers, like a running joke is, you're always finding a new way to lose. And sometimes, your luck just, it goes one way or another. And sometimes it's going the other way. And I was having one of those periods of time where nothing was quite swinging my way. And so I went out and I was in the, second or third round. I don't think I got past the third round for a while there. And I dialed in, came up and, ran the car, and then I got about halfway down the track and it started going pep, 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 and then I thought, oh man, I forgot to put gas in the stupid car. I was out of gas. So I let off, come around, it's when you're running a race car, it's out of gas before it's out of gas. Like, you have to have enough gas so that you're getting maximum flow to the carburetor to run a drag race because your pedal's all the way down to the floor and you're running maximum throttle, full throttle. And so yeah, I let off and just cruised back to the pit area, and I don't throw my helmet or stuff like that, but I was pissed. And I packed all my shit up and headed for the gate and was driving home in a huff, feeling sorry for myself. Ugh. And then I ran out of gas for real, like how you run out of gas out on the street when there's no more gas left in your gas tank, not drag racing out of gas. So I actually ran out of gas twice. And so fortunately I was about a mile away from the gas station. There used to be a gas station right on the road into Bremerton Raceway, if you're familiar with that place. And I, of course, didn't have a gas can. You know, it would have been so easy to just borrow a half a gallon of gas from somebody at the racetrack, but no. So I stormed down the street, go to the gas station, buy a gallon of water, drink a bunch of it, pour the rest out, fill it up with gas, and start walking back down the street with my thumb out. But nobody's going to pick me up because I'm a pissed off looking guy storming down the street with what appears to be a gallon of piss. So I ended up having to walk all the way back to the car, put a gallon of gas in it, and blah, blah, blah. So that's 2 for 1. 2 for 1 stupid. Ran out of gas twice in the same day. Another stupid thing that I did was I ran one of these 8 3/4 rear ends. I was talking about it before. You can see this is the part that drops out. I ran one of these setups for way too long. This is the 8 3/4 rear end, and you know, a guy who's set up some stuff for me once said, I asked him, well, how come you don't build 8 3/4 rear end setups? And he said, because it's not a performance rear end. This part bends. Had that happen. Of course, the teeth all get ground off the ring gear. What else happens? Oh, these perches tear off. A variety of things. They're nice because it's easy to replace the gear set, you know, pretty much on the side of the road if you have to, and so you can change gear sets, and you know, they're good for like a small, like a Dodge Dart or something without all that much power in it, but you know, they fit in there, and you kind of keep racing, and before you know it, you just blown up a few of them. And you know, this whole setup, like you see here, is probably worth $500. It's not broken. It's maybe it's worth more than that. Not a whole lot more, but then when you start adding stuff like, you know, beefed up stuff, gears, axles. You can see somebody's put we got the long studs in there. But anyways, by the time you get it and put it in your car, it's about $1,200. And if you get something like this, which is the Venom, this is actually technically not a Dana 60, but it looks just like one. It's close enough. This is a 9 1/4, which is, I won't go into details, but the performance version of this costs $2,500. If you build it yourself, it can be significantly cheaper than that. So you run the math, and if you blow up 4 or 5 of those fuckers, you could buy 2 of these. But the thing is, once you put one of these in your car, it's never going to break. I mean, it'll last forever. And it's got, that's the dumb thing I did, was by running a whole bunch of those and not switching to this until after I'd already wasted a bunch of money on that. But you know, another wise person told me once is, it costs a lot of money to be poor. And you know, it just seemed cheaper at the time to keep throwing bad rear ends at the car than to save up my money and buy a good one. I have no excuses. I don't know why I did that. Okay, here's the last dumb thing I'm going to tell you about drag racing today. And if you made it this far, then you've got the patience and perhaps the insider knowledge to hang with me here, because this is a slightly involved story that involves stock Eliminator details, which I know are not for everybody. What happened was, my wagon had been out of commission for a little while, and we'd put together a different car with a backstory that you'll have to get out of me in person. I'm not going to ever put it on video, but we were running this car that we'd put together. It was a 66 Plymouth Belvedere with a 3D3 and a small 4-barrel of 525. Stock Eliminator, you have to run the carburetor that came with the car. I mean, you can blueprint it and take it apart and put it back together again, and as long as you don't make it holes bigger than they came from the factory, it's all pretty much good. So we had put this car together. It was beautiful. It was the very end of the season, and we wanted to see what it would do because we'd just gotten it all running and stuff. And so you know, there's a lot of stupid in this story. The only race that we could see that we were going to be able to do was Medford, Oregon, which is about 6 hours south of here, not including the ferry ride. And so we pulled the car down there and ran it down the track in qualifying, and it was slow. And in Stock Eliminator, you have to go a certain speed or faster, or you're not going to qualify. You have to be, I can't remember what, it was an H stocker, and I think the index on it was 1220, I think. And somewhere in there, low 12s. And we couldn't hit it. It was running high 12s. It might have even been in the 13s. It was really disappointing. And we went through it. We couldn't figure out, you know, all the spark plugs were working. It sounded great when you fired it up, and you know, everything seemed fine, but we were just scratching our heads. And we qualified. We made 2 qualifiers because usually you get like 2 on Friday and then 2 on Saturday and then racing on Sunday. And so we were, you know, by this point it's just a very, very, very expensive test and tune. We're just trying to, you know, get the thing to work like it should. We weren't even really down there to race in the Stock Eliminator event, although technically I guess that's what we were doing. And so a friend of ours said, you know what if it's the carburetor? I got another carburetor that works really well. Why don't we put that on and see what it does? And it was a Stock Eliminator carburetor, but it was much bigger. And I can't even remember the details of it, but it was a 750, not the 525. And Carter AVS, if that means anything to you. The one that came off of it was an AFB, a little tiny one. And so we put the AVS on there, and boy, that woke him right up. And he ran 1160s or something like that, enough to be well under the index and in the top half of the qualifying pack. And we were like, yay! So we figured out, you know, what was wrong with the car, and now we knew what we had to do. We had to figure out how to make the carburetor that was on the car work better. Well, that was after the second qualifier on Saturday, so we went back to my friend's house that we were staying at in Medford, and we kind of had a little meeting and decided, well, you know, that's all well and good, but we can't race because that's not the legal carburetor, and it would just be cheating, and we risk getting in trouble, and it's just not the right thing to do. And so we decided to come back to the track, pack up the car, and go home. Now we knew what our marching orders were and how to make the car work better for the next year. So I was working for Mopar Max, I think is the name of it, a website that was all about Mopar stuff, and I wrote him a story about the experience going down to Medford and then loading up and coming home because the carburetor was too big or not correct, or however you want to put it. And my friend Jody, his brother Toby actually, who's another Stock Eliminator racer at the time, wrote onto the classracer.com website. They've got a forum about a bunch of different stuff, but their primary purpose is a forum about stock and super stock racing, and basically said, oh boys, look what I found, and put a link to the article that I'd written for Mopar Max. And a bunch of stock and super stock racers read the article and became very, very angry about it. Some were really downright rude, kind of insulting, you know, like kind of hurt my feelings. And some people stood up for me because, you know, I am who I am. If you know me, you know, it really is a party and everyone's invited. And I don't have any, I don't have an angry bone in my body, really. I'm not a cheater, and I'm not out to screw anybody over or hatch any nefarious plans. But a lot of people really acted like I did. It was, I mean, thousands of hits and hundreds of people chipping in, and it was crazy. I mean, it was crazy. I think I wrote on there once to defend myself, but basically I just decided I had to just let it run its course. So there's just layers of dumb stuff. So let's go through with the dumb stuff here. The dumb thing that I did was, the crime, quote unquote, was I qualified the car with the wrong carburetor on it, and that's cheating, and you're not allowed to do that, no matter what. Not even if you're not in competition. If you're qualifying, that qualifying is part of competition. I didn't really think of it that way. A lot of these guys who are in stock Eliminator have been doing it for 50 years or some shit, and that was, you know, you got to respect the game. Okay, I understand that. Then what I should have done, and everything probably would have been okay, would have been to, when I left, the morning when I packed the car up and left, I should have gone to the officials and said, take my name off the qualifying sheet. I'm leaving. But I didn't. So my name stayed on the qualifying sheet. So even though I wasn't there to compete, and whoever was qualified to line up against my car in the first round got a bye round, so I would have just lost then. It still seems like a load of crap to me. But it makes sense. It makes sense. I mean, that's just between you and me. I don't want to reignite that fire. But so that was the dumb thing I did, was left without pulling my name off the qualifying sheet. And then the other really dumb thing I did was writing about it. And you know, I really, it was an honest mistake. But if you didn't think it was an honest mistake, it sounded like, you know, butter wouldn't melt in my mouth, my shit don't stink, all that kind of stuff. So that was probably the dumbest thing I've ever done in stock Eliminator drag racing. And tell you the truth, it still kind of hurts a little bit to think about it. But you know, we all do dumb things, and you just got to pick yourself up and try not to do the dumb thing again. You know, like, you learn something new every day, and it really helps if it's not bullshit. So until next time, take it easy, keep the rubber side down, keep the shiny side up, and we'll see you out at the track.